He leaned toward me in open court and whispered, "You don't know who my father is, and you're going to regret this." If you want more courtroom drama where a judge explains the verdict in plain English, stay with me and follow the channel for stories like this. Before I begin, I need to be clear. This is a dramatized story inspired by courtroom lessons. I have worn a judge's robe for many years, long enough to learn one truth that never changes. The law is not impressed by money, anger, or pride, but people still try. And I have also learned something else. Justice served is not only about rules and punishment, but also about accountability and compassion, held in the same steady hands. A long time ago, I sentenced a young man who stole food because he was hungry, and I still remember the look in his eyes when I asked him a simple question: "Did you think about who would pay for it?" That day taught me that responsibility matters, but so does understanding why someone made a bad choice. This legal story began on a rainy evening in Riverton City when a small sedan was hit at an intersection by a bright, expensive sports car. The driver of the sedan was Maria Torres. She worked 2 jobs and cared for her mother at home. She did not come to court asking for sympathy. She came asking for fairness because her car was crushed, her arm was hurt, and she missed weeks of work. There was no graphic detail in the reports, just a plain, painful truth. One careless decision can knock a normal life off its tracks. The young man accused of causing the crash was Daniel Carter. He was the son of a billionaire who funded buildings, charities, and political events. Daniel arrived for his first hearing in a suit that looked like it had never been sat in. His hair was perfect. His smile was easy. He walked like the floor belonged to him. He looked around my courtroom the way someone looks around a private club, deciding if the place is good enough. Keep listening until the end, because the turning point in this case was not the crash itself. It was what Daniel tried to do inside my courtroom. On the first day, Daniel's lawyer spoke smoothly. He suggested Maria had confused the light and pulled out too quickly. He suggested the rain made the road slick. He suggested Daniel was just unlucky. Daniel sat beside him and tapped his finger like he was waiting for a late dinner order. Then Maria took the witness seat. She held her hands together to stop them from shaking. Her voice was quiet but clear. She told me she had the green light. She told me she saw headlights coming fast. She told me she braced for impact and then heard metal and glass. She said she woke up later, scared for her mother, scared for her job, scared she would not be able to lift boxes at work again. She did not call Daniel names. She did not shout. She simply told the truth of how it felt to be hit by someone who never expected consequences. When Maria finished, the courtroom became completely silent. It was the kind of silence that does not come from fear, but from people realizing they are hearing something real. Even Daniel stopped tapping his finger. For a moment, I saw something in his face, maybe discomfort, maybe boredom, maybe both, and then it vanished. In court, I do not measure people by their last name. I measure them by what they did, what they knew, and what they chose. That is how the law is supposed to work. So I asked questions in simple language, the way I often do. I asked Maria about the light. I asked her about her speed. I asked her if she had been distracted. She answered without guessing. She admitted what she did not remember. That mattered to me because honesty is the first step of accountability. If you've ever wondered how a judge decides what is fair, leave a comment about what you think matters most: intent, harm, or honesty. Then Daniel took the stand. He did not like the witness seat. Most people do not. It is a small place where you cannot hide behind a desk, a title, or a reputation. He sat back and spoke like he was doing me a favor. He said he was driving carefully. He said Maria came out of nowhere. He said the other driver was overreacting. And then, in front of everyone, he made the mistake that changed the whole tone of the trial. He looked at me and said, "Judge, I have responsibilities. People depend on my family. This can go away if you do the right thing." I asked him calmly, "What do you mean by go away?" He smiled again, like we were sharing a private joke, and that is when he leaned forward and whispered the line I opened with: "You don't know who my father is, and you're going to regret this." I did not raise my voice. I did not slam a gavel. I simply looked at him and said, "Mr. Carter, I know exactly where you are. You are in a courtroom. And in this room, nobody gets to threaten the court, not with money, not with influence, and not with a famous last name." Daniel's lawyer tried to jump in. He said his client was frustrated. He said Daniel did not mean it. Daniel shrugged, as if the rules of respect were optional. So I explained it in plain terms for everyone watching. I said, a courtroom is not a place for pressure. It is a place for facts. If someone tries to bend the process with threats, that is not strength, it is fear of the truth. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He sat back and crossed his arms. And for the first time, I saw anger flash across his face. Not loud anger, but the kind that says, I'm not used to being told no. Stay with me, because what happened next revealed a hidden plan that Daniel thought nobody would notice. During a break, my clerk quietly handed me a note. It said the court had received a new piece of evidence that morning from an employee at a private parking garage near the crash site. The employee's name was Jordan Blake. Jordan worked nights. He said he had seen Daniel's car come in earlier that evening, and he had kept a routine log because the garage handled high-value cars. At first, it sounded small. A parking log does not usually decide a case. But the note also said Jordan had attached a short video clip from a security camera angle that did not show the street, only the garage entrance and the driver's seat area. When we resumed, Daniel's lawyer objected right away. He said the evidence was late. He said it was unfair. He said it would confuse the issue. His words were neat, but the urgency in his voice was not. I allowed the video to be shown because courts exist to find the truth, not to protect anyone from discomfort. The clip played on the monitor. It showed Daniel's sports car rolling into the garage earlier that day. The driver stepped out. It was not Daniel. It was a friend, also young, also wealthy-looking, also confident. Then, in the next part of the clip, Daniel walked in from the side door and slid into the driver's seat. He checked his phone, adjusted the mirror, and drove out. Daniel's face changed. It happened fast, like a mask slipping. His lawyer stood up so quickly his chair scraped the floor. And then the courtroom became completely silent again. You could hear the soft hum of the lights above us. Even the people in the back row stopped moving. Silence like that does not need rules to enforce it. I looked at Daniel and asked, Mr. Carter, you told this court you were driving the entire evening. Is that still your testimony? He swallowed. He glanced at his lawyer. He said, it doesn't matter. It's my car. I nodded once. It matters, I said, because truth matters. If you're finding this judge's eye view helpful, consider sharing this story with someone who cares about accountability and second chances. Now the case had two problems instead of one. The first problem was the crash. The second was dishonesty under oath, which is a fancy phrase that simply means lying to the court after promising to tell the truth. I do not say that to sound harsh. I say it because the legal system cannot work if people treat truth like a costume they can change. Jordan Blake then testified. He looked nervous, like a person who had never been inside a courtroom drama before and wished he could disappear into his own jacket. He told me he did not come for money. He came because, after the crash, he saw news reports and recognized the car. He said he had also received a message from a private security worker connected to Daniel's family. The message suggested Jordan should forget what he saw and enjoy a gift if he stayed quiet. Jordan did not bring the message on his phone, at least not at first. Daniel's lawyer smiled slightly and asked, so you have no proof of that message, correct? Jordan hesitated. His cheeks turned red. Then he said, I do have it. I was scared, so I saved it somewhere else. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small paper with a login code. He explained, in simple words, that he had uploaded screenshots to a private online folder and then deleted them from his phone. He was afraid someone would take his phone. He was afraid he would be blamed. He was afraid he would lose his job. We paused while the court technician accessed the folder. And there it was, messages offering money, the promise of protection, and one final line that made my stomach tighten. It said, if the judge pushes this, remind him who pays for his city. That message was not signed by Daniel, but it came from a number linked to a member of Daniel's personal security team. At that point, this was no longer just a traffic case with an injured victim. It had become something deeper, an attempt to interfere with the fairness of the process. That goes against the law in the simplest sense, because it tries to pull justice away from the facts and toward power. Daniel finally spoke without waiting for his lawyer. "This is ridiculous," he said. "My family gives more to this city than this whole court costs. People should be grateful." I kept my voice even. "Gratitude is not a currency you can spend in here," I told him. "This court is not for sale. Tell me your thoughts after the verdict, because the hardest part of justice served is choosing a response that is firm without becoming cruel." Now I had to make decisions in two directions at once. I needed to protect the public from dangerous driving, and I needed to protect the court process from intimidation. But I also needed to remember that Daniel was young, and young people can change if they are forced to face the truth. So I focused on what the evidence showed, not on what anyone's name suggested. The crash report, the road camera footage, and the car's own data showed the sports car was traveling far above the safe speed for rain. That was not a small mistake. It was a choice. Maria's car was in the intersection with the right-of-way. Daniel's story about her coming out of nowhere did not match the video or the timing. Then there was the dishonesty. Daniel had been willing to say anything that helped him. He had also been willing to use his father's influence as a shield. Even if Daniel did not personally send those messages, his world had created a bubble where someone thought it was normal to pressure a witness and remind a judge. I took a short recess before the verdict, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to speak with care. A verdict is not a speech. It is a decision that changes lives. A judge must not enjoy that power. A judge must respect it. When I returned, I looked at Maria first. I said, "Ms. Torres, I have heard you. I will not forget that this started with harm to you." Then I looked at Daniel. He tried to stare me down. He wanted a battle. He wanted drama. But I would not give him that. I said, "Mr. Carter, the law exists so the street outside belongs to everyone, not just the people with the fastest cars. It exists so a witness can tell the truth without being bought or scared. And it exists so this courtroom stays a place where facts matter." Here's how I explain my reasoning in simple terms. First, accountability. Daniel drove in a way that was unsafe for the weather and the road. That choice led to a crash that hurt someone who did nothing wrong. Responsibility does not disappear because you are rich, stressed, or used to getting what you want. Second, fairness. Maria lost time, income, and peace of mind. The court cannot give her those weeks back, but it can recognize the harm and require real repair. Third, compassion. Compassion does not mean no consequences. It means I consider whether the consequence can push a person toward learning instead of pushing them into bitterness. Daniel did not need a gentle warning. He needed a firm boundary, clearly explained, with a path to earn back trust. So I delivered the verdict. I found Daniel Carter responsible for reckless driving and for dishonest testimony to the court, and I ordered a strict probation period with close monitoring, a long suspension of his driver's license, a required safe driving program, and substantial financial restitution to cover Maria Torres's losses and repairs. I also ordered Daniel to complete hundreds of hours of community service in a road safety and rehabilitation program, where he would spend time with people whose lives were changed by careless driving, not as punishment for pain's sake, but as a lesson in reality. And because intimidation has no place in justice, I referred the witness pressure messages for further review, making it clear that any person involved would be held accountable under the law. I looked at Daniel and said one final thing, still without raising my voice. "You asked if I know who your father is. Today, I am focused on who you are becoming. If you learn from this, you will thank the court later. If you refuse, you will keep meeting courts like this one. If you want more legal story videos where the judge explains the verdict step by step, make sure you come back for the next case." The reaction in the courtroom was not loud. It was not a movie ending. It was quiet, heavy, and honest. Maria closed her eyes and let out a slow breath, like someone who had been holding air in her lungs for months. Jordan Blake looked down, as if he could finally stop being afraid. Daniel sat stiff, shocked that the world had not bent around him. His lawyer whispered urgently. Daniel did not answer right away. And then something unexpected happened. Daniel stood up slowly and looked toward Maria. His voice was lower than before. He did not apologize in a perfect way. He did not suddenly become a new person in one moment. But he said, I didn't think. I didn't think it would go that far. I nodded. That is why the law exists, I said. To protect people from the cost of someone else's, I didn't think. As the room emptied, I stayed at my bench for a moment. I thought about how fragile fairness can feel when money and power enter the room. I also thought about how strong fairness can be when ordinary people tell the truth anyway. Justice served is not a judge winning. It is a community seeing that rules apply to everyone, and that the courtroom is a place where responsibility is real. This case reminded me that compassion and accountability are not enemies. Compassion helps me remember Daniel is a human being who can still choose to grow. Accountability helps me remember Maria is a human being who deserves protection and repair. The verdict was not revenge. It was a boundary. It was the law doing what it was made to do: hold people responsible, protect the public, and keep the door open for change. And if there is one lesson I hope you carry with you, it is this: your choices do not stay inside you. They spread into other people's lives. The law is not here to shame anyone. It is here to keep strangers safe, to keep promises meaningful, and to remind us all that no last name is bigger than the truth.